You can draw this in Procreate. You can draw this in Procreate by just following this super easy and fun video tutorial. I have developed these You Can Draw This videos especially for people who don't have any drawing experience or experience with the app Procreate. So just follow the video all the way till the end and I will guide you through every single step. All you need are the brushes that are already in the app Procreate, plus some free brushes that you can find at freefromflow.com. There you can sign up to get access to my treasure chest full of brushes, color palettes, and my special ebook about color theory. And yes, it's really absolutely free. If you already have access to the treasure chest but don't have the latest brush yet, just go to your email inbox and check the latest newsletter. I will always keep you posted whenever new stuff gets added to the treasure chest. But now let's get started with this super fun and easy tutorial. Just don't forget that once you have finished following this, to share your work on Instagram. You can tag me in the image, not just in the description, and that way I'll be able to find your work and perhaps we'll see it in the next You Can Draw This video. The canvas we're working on in this tutorial is 2300 pixels by 3000 pixels and I have set my color profile to sRGB. If you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using during this tutorial, then you can download the color palette for free through the link in the description. First color we'll be using is this bright yellow. We are going to drop it on layer 1, so you can just drag the circle onto your canvas to fill the entire canvas. And then we are going to create a new layer by going to these two little squares and by clicking the plus. And then we'll go and pick a brush. We'll go to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. And then we'll set our color to this second color right here in the color palette. And now we'll start creating some hills and mountains. We are going to start pretty near the top, about here. It's about 75% in height, I guess. Oh, and the brush size is set to 7% and the opacity is at 100%. And let's just make a wobbly line going from left to right. Like that. And then you can fill this lower part of your canvas by dragging in the color like this. And if you hold your pen and move from left to right, you can change the color drop threshold. You want it to be close to the right, just that it doesn't spill all over your canvas. That way you can make sure that you don't get that weird light edge right near your line. Alright, let's move to the next layer. We'll go to these two squares again and click the plus for a new layer to draw on. And we'll move to the next color in the color palette. That's this third color over here. And we'll make another wobbly line. Start about here. And you know, how hard can it be? A wobbly line, that's something I'm sure you can manage. We'll go all the way to the right and again drop in the color by dragging in that circle. And then we'll create another layer by going to the two squares and clicking the plus. And we'll pick the fourth color this time. Now we'll start a little bit lower and we'll make a bit of a different wobbly line. We'll move our wobbly line downwards a little bit, give it some bigger wobbles, and we'll go down all the way here and we'll fill this shape again by dragging in that circle. Now let's create another layer. Perhaps you could already guess it. And let's pick that fifth color in the color palette. Now we'll start pretty low and we'll go to the right side. Make a wobbly line going up. And then we'll leave the canvas here on the right side. Drag in the color again. And get ready to make a new layer by clicking the plus. And let's pick the next color. That's that sixth color in the color palette. We'll start about here and make a wobbly line going up and then down again. And here near the right side we'll go up again and then down to the right side and drag in the color to fill it. This is becoming a nice minimalistic piece of art. Let's click the plus for a new layer and let's pick the next color in the color palette. Let's make another wobbly line. We'll start a little bit higher here and then go down with our little wobbles and then go all the way to the right and drag in the color to fill that shape. Let's click the plus for another one. We're almost there. Let's pick this color over here. We'll start a bit lower again. And we'll go up here. Make a wobbly line, and then here we'll go down to the right side. And then drag in the color to fill this shape. Now we'll make a final layer. Let's click the plus again and pick that last color here in the color palette. We'll start right here in the middle and make a series of wobbles. All the way to the right and then drag in the color. Next thing I'd like to do is add a gradient to our sky. We'll go to that yellow layer, layer 1. And for our brush, we are going to use an airbrushing brush, the soft brush. And for the color, we'll pick this orange, that second color in the color palette. The brush opacity is set to 40% and the size is at 12%. We are going to make some horizontal strokes here in the sky. We'll leave that top part to be yellow, but we'll make a gradient which will be warmer and more orange near the bottom. And I will switch to that third color in the color palette and add a little bit of pinkish tones as well to the bottom here. Just make horizontal strokes. And then finally, I'll pick that fourth color here, that's a brighter pink, and add that just to the bottom here. We can make the brush a little bit smaller, let's say 6%. And add a light line there. And to make this gradient look smoother, you can go to the magic wand here, pick Gaussian blur, click layer, and then you can drag your pen or your finger to the right to blur that layer. Let's go for something like 13.5%, and then just click the magic wand again. Now let's go and add some stuff to our hills, mountains, whatever you'd like to call them. Let's start with layer 9, click that layer, and for the brush we are going to the treasure chest brushes and use the pine tree broad brush. And for the color, we will pick that same color that we used for that hill. The brush opacity is at 100%. And we'll make the brush pretty small, perhaps 3%. And we'll just go over that edge of those hills and add these tiny little pine trees. To make it look less like a smooth, wobbly line, and give that suggestion of a forest in these hills or mountains. Add a little bit of texture here. Just go from left to right. Make sure that you don't get any floating trees. Just go along that edge, filling it up entirely. And we'll do the same thing for the layer underneath. That's layer 8. Click that layer and be sure to use the same color as we already used on the layer. You can either go to the color palette or you can use your finger, hold it on your screen and pick the color. Or you can actually also click this little rounded square and then move that circle around until you have the color that you want. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller. We'll go for a small 3%, You have a big 3% and a small 3% actually. I'll make it just a little bit smaller since, well, it's more in the distance, so the trees will appear to be smaller, look smaller. Of course, they aren't really smaller. But you know how that works, right? When things are farther away, they appear to be smaller. Let's just go over this edge again and just give it that suggestion of a forest on our hill. And again, make sure that you don't get any floating trees. That would look a little bit weird. And just go from left to right over that edge. Now let's move down to the next one, layer 7. Again, I'll pick that local color. I'll just use my finger and make the brush a little bit smaller. Again, I'm at 2% right now. And again, I'll go over that edge. Just giving it that suggestion. As we move further away from the viewer, those pine trees, they will really be harder to see. It will be harder to see any individual trees in any case. So we're going to use a different brush now. We will go to the organic brushes and use the mountain ash brush. I have it set to 100% opacity and the size is at 2%. Now let's go to layer 6. And again, pick that local color and let's just go over that edge, giving it a slight texture. Just so that it's not a perfectly smooth line. We'll go all the way to this side. And then we'll do the same for layer 5. Pick that local color and just go over that edge, making it look less smooth. Now that next mountain or hill, that's so far away that we probably won't see anything, any texture there. So we'll leave it like that. Now we are going to blur our layers slightly because as you move further away, everything will look less crisp. It'll be a bit out of focus. Now layer 9, it's really close to the viewer, so we won't touch that. But layer 8, we can blur that just slightly. Let's go to the magic wand, pick Gaussian blur, and then layer. And then slide to the right and give it just a slight blur. Let's say 1.1%. Then we'll go to layer 7, which is a bit further away. We'll go to the magic wand again, pick Gaussian blur, set to layer. And let's give that a 1.2% blur. And then we'll move down to layer 6. Again, pick Gaussian blur. And blur that just a little bit more. Let's go for 1.6% for example. Now let's go to layer 5. Pick Gaussian blur again. And we can blur that for, let's say, 2%. And then we'll move to layer 4. Go to Gaussian blur again. Pick layer. And we can go for 2.2% here. Then go to layer 3. Again, Gaussian blur. Let's pick 2.5% here. And then finally, layer 2, Gaussian blur. Let's go for 3% there. Next, we are going to add some slight mist to our mountain scene. We'll start with some mist between layer 8 and layer 9. First, click layer 8 and then click the plus for a new layer on which we will draw our mist. You could also just paint on layer 8, but if you make a new layer, you have more control. If you don't like what you're doing, then you can always just erase or remove the entire layer, move it around, blur it, whatever. For the brush, let's go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush again. And for the color, we will pick this bright blue at the bottom. Let's make our brush a little bit bigger. Let's go for 12%. Let's just go over that bottom area here and add a slight blue mist. You can also add a little bit for that next mountain. That's between layer 7 and 8. So we'll click layer 7, click the plus for a new layer. So we can add a little bit of mist here. I'll make the brush smaller though. Let's go for 8%. And just go along that edge. Just a little bit of mist. We'll do the same thing for all of these hills. So let's go and make a layer between a layer 6 and 7. But we will pick a different color. We'll pick this color right here. And I will go over this area, adding some slight light mist here on the right side as well. Then we'll go to the layer menu and make a layer between layer 5 and 6. So first click layer 5, click the plus. Let's make the brush 10%. Now let's go over this area. Adding some mist here. And just make these horizontal strokes. I'm using very little pressure on my pen. Like that, and then we'll make a layer between layer 5 and layer 4, or layer 4 and layer 5. Click the plus. And now let's add some mist here. Just making horizontal strokes. You can actually make the brush a little bit bigger, 14%. And I want the bottom part to be lighter than the top part. So don't add a whole lot of mist to that top, just to that bottom area. Now let's move to the back. We'll make a layer between layer 3 and layer 4. So click layer 3, click the plus, and then add mist to this area. Again, making horizontal strokes, using very little pressure. And since the opacity of the brush is pretty low at 40%, you can make multiple strokes, slowly building that mist up. I will move all the way to the back between layer 2 and layer 3. So first click layer 2, then click the plus. And again, make these horizontal strokes, adding mist here in the back. Next thing I'd like to do is add a setting sun to our scene. We'll go all the way to the bottom to do that. We'll click layer 1 and then click the plus for a new layer on top. For our brush, we'll go to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. And for the color, we will pick this color right here in the color palette. We are going to draw a circle, and that's super easy in Procreate. You can just draw a circle, hold your pen in place, and then tap one finger on the screen to make it snap to a perfect circle. Then you can go to Edit Shaper at the top, and you can move your circle around. I want it to be right here behind those hills or mountains. Something like that, and then I'll just drag in the color by dragging in that circle into our shape. Now I'd like to duplicate this layer. We'll go to the layer menu and you can slide to the left and then you'll see duplicate. Now we have two sun layers. We'll go to the bottom one first and then go to Gaussian blur. Under that, magic wand. Gaussian blur, set to layer, and then slide to the right to add a blur. You can go for, well, let's say around 13-14%. Then we'll go to that top layer and we'll add just a slight blur there as well. So we'll go to the magic wand again, Gaussian blur, set to layer, and add just a slight blur. Let's say something between 1.5% and 2%. And then click the magic wand again. I want to add a warm glow around our sun, reflecting on those mountains or hills. So we'll go to that layer, that's layer 2, and we only want that glow to show up on that mountain and not on the sky. Now you can either do that by clicking the layer and turning on alpha lock. That way you can only paint on whatever is already on the layer, or you can create a new layer on top and set that to clipping mask like this. Click the plus, click the layer, and then turn on clipping mask. That way whatever you paint on this new layer will only show up on that shape of that hill. Now the upside of having a layer like this set to clipping mask is that you can always remove it, turn it on or off. You have more control like that. So let's go for this layer with clipping mask. Now we'll go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush again and pick this bright pink. And now let's add a little glow. Let's make the brush a bit smaller. Let's go for 7% and add a glow here just below our sun. I'm making circular motions, slowly building up that glow. That's looking good. Now I just want to add a couple of clouds. We'll do that on a new layer. We can go back to layer 1, that's the layer with the sky. Click the plus. And for the color, we'll pick this 5th color in the color palette. I'll make our soft brush a bit smaller. Let's go for perhaps 4%. And I want to add some little clouds here. And I'll do that by making these circular motions right next to each other. And it's still looking a little bit fuzzy now, but that's just a base shape for our cloud. One here on the right. And we'll make another one here on the left. I'm using very little pressure on my pen so that the brush stroke is very transparent. So we can slowly build that cloud up. Because an Apple pencil like this, it has pressure sensitivity. And depending on the brush you're using, if you press harder, it'll be more opaque, your stroke. And if you press just lightly, it'll be more transparent. But you also have brushes where if you press harder, the brush will become bigger. Your stroke will become bigger. I'm going to make the brush smaller. Let's go to 2%. Let's just add some little detail. Make these rounded shapes here at the top. And I'm focusing on the top of the cloud. I want the bottom side to be more blurry. And on this side as well. The small circular motions. You can make a little wispy wisp here at the end of your cloud. Now for a final touch, we are going to use one of my people silhouette brushes. It's part of the treasure chest, so you can download it for free if you go to freefromflow.com. Let's go all the way to the top in our layer menu. That's layer 9 here, and let's click the plus for a new layer. Now let's go to the treasure chest brushes and pick the swing brush. And for the color, we will pick this darkest color over here. And let's drop it in. Now, it's not really placed right, so we can just go to that arrow here. And while we have it set to uniform, you can use these handles to make it bigger and smaller very easily. And you can move it around. I want it to be below the sun. I'll make it a little bit bigger so that sun is right between those lines. And I want that woman to be right on top of those darkest mountains. I think this is a nice placement. Now you can just click that arrow to get out of the menu and you're all set. You have just created an easy sunset scene in Procreate. I hope you have enjoyed following this You Can Draw This video tutorial. If you did, then be sure to check out my other You Can Draw This video tutorials as well. And once you're all finished with those and you still want more, then you can always check out my Patreon page, of course, because there I have a lot more video tutorials ranging from beginner level to more advanced levels. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.